Greetings and welcome to this edition of
Positronic.
I'm Barry P. Cook. I'm here to talk about the latest episode of Star Wars Andor. It was called Nobody's Listening. And it picks up in the beginning right where the previous episode left off, just about, with Bix being interrogated. And this interrogation was conducted in a way that was just very chilling and, kind of like made your skin crawl, the way the Imperial lady officer person was conducting her questioning. It was just very intense. And during the session, Bix is told that the Empire knows about her radio use and about her friend that kept the radio, and she threatens to torture her for information on Andor, as well as information on Luthen and any stolen Imperial equipment, before she actually hands her over to the torturer when she doesn't give her any information. Next, we join Cassian in the workroom once again, where we see that he's working the system in order to get a leg up on his team's competition. Back to Bix. At the hands of her torturer, she's put in a headset that allows her to hear the apparently maddening death cries of a particular species that the torturer was familiar with and had recorded, I guess. Back in the workroom, Cassian goes to use the men's room and saws at a pipe in the wall instead of actually using the men's room. And I thought it was weird that there are no cameras watching places like the bathroom. You'd think there would be, but anyway. When he gets back to his table, he realizes, along with a coworker, that the elevator in the room isn't electrified, and he seems to be planning some type of attack with the coworker. The old man at Cassian's table, I guess his name is Olaf, he seems to be losing it a little bit, both physically and mentally. Next, we see Mon Mothma, and she's in the Senate giving a speech against the Emperor's crackdowns, but she's tuned out largely before being told by her driver that her cousin has arrived in town. Back at the prison, there's some commotion in the tunnels when the inmates try to communicate with each other across the way, which they were doing in the last episode. We learn that Mon's cousin is Vel, and the two of them meet and talk a little bit about the precariousness of everything, of the danger that is all around them, both from the Empire and, by itself, and because of what they're doing to try to fight the Empire. Back at the prison, Cassian tries to get info out of Andy Serkis's character, but he's not having it, because he seems to think that the Empire is listening to them and doesn't want to get in trouble. But Cassian insists that they're not, because they're considered less than nothing by the Empire, and they wouldn't bother to listen. On Coruscant, the white suits have a meeting, and they connect Cassian to Aldhani, and they're apparently closely watching his mother. Back at the prison, a rumor starts to spread that a whole floor of men was killed. Then we see our good friend Karn, and he tells his mother that he's been promoted. And then we find out that he apparently has quite the psychological hard-on for Didra and her work, pursuing Andor, which doesn't amuse her. Mon discovers that she has to make a large deposit to her account to cover her cash diversions, and that to get it, she's going to have to meet with essentially a loan shark, a thug, in order to not get caught moving money around. Back at the prison, we see Olaf, and he's in super rough shape as the shift ends, apparently from a massive stroke. And he ends up being euthanized. They call in a technician, and he comes in and basically puts him out of his misery, saying that there's nothing he could do for him. Cassian and Andy Serkis's character talk to this medical technician, and he seems to explain, because he tells them what went on. They ask him what happened on the second floor. And he seems to explain that what happened was that the Empire killed the entire floor of workers so that word wouldn't get out that someone who had just started on the second floor was someone who had supposedly been released the day before from level 4. Indicating that the whole idea that people ever get released is bullshit. In other words, he tells them that when the men on the second floor realized that a new member of the second floor crew was someone who had supposedly been set free after having served on a different floor, they realized that the whole thing about people getting out is bullshit. Nobody gets out. They just pretend, and then they put them to work on a different floor. And then when the Empire knew that the men knew that, they killed them in an attempt to keep that information from spreading to the wider prison, which it now has. And after Cassian and Andy Serkis realize this, Cassian again asks the Andy Serkis character for information. And this time, the Andy Serkis character tells him what he wants to know. So he is now no longer thinking that he's really going to get out in a couple of months, and realizes that it's bullshit and that he's just going to be put to work on a different floor. That's what it seems to me. They didn't come right out and say that, but that's what I think the guy was saying, and that's what I think the two characters understood him to mean. And that's why Andy Serkis's character changes tune about cooperating with Cassian on some kind of plan or whatever that might get them out. So once again, I thought this was a really good episode. The implications of what the Empire did to the men on the second floor, just to maintain the illusion that people eventually get released, which in turn keeps the men, working and obedient and hopeful, which in turn keeps them working, is just horrific. And, just another indication of how shitty the Empire is. And, the whole treatment of Olaf when he had a stroke, rather than put him in a medical facility, try to rehabilitate him, give him some kind of quality of life for whatever years he had left, they just euthanized him on the spot because he's chattel to the Empire. And that is horrifying as well. And, of course, the whole concept of torture is terrible. And the doctor guy, the character's name is Dr. something or other, I forget. But the guy that administers the torture to Bix is delighted by the opportunity to torture someone. And that's just chilling. I thought that, once again, the woman who plays Dedra is really, really good in the part. She's terrifying. And, the idea that they're piecing things together and getting closer to finding out who all is conspiring against them and in what ways and what the connections are, and that they're, the noose is tightening once again on Cassian and everybody is, nerve-wracking. And the other thing I think that is sort of poignant about this show and this episode is how mad Mr. B and his bonnet, I guess his name is Cyril, is over what happened to him. And when I say mad, I don't mean angry, I mean crazy. He was a dedicated worker. He wanted to do his job well and, crack down on people doing things they weren't supposed to be doing. And he got kicked in the teeth for it when his underlings' best effort didn't capture Cassian and instead got a bunch of his men killed, which resulted in his, being fired, the aforementioned kick in the teeth. And it's a little disturbing how much of a mind boner he has for Dedra, because she's like him in her single-mindedness. And it's just like a conflux of psychopaths. Even though she rejects his sort of fervor, it's just mind-boggling to me that this guy is out there seething over his loss of status and how single-minded he is about getting Andor. It's very creepy and I love it. So, I'm still enjoying this show. There are 3 more episodes this season, and I, week to week, I just can't wait for it to be Star Wars Day. I look forward to the episodes very much. So there you go. I'm going to get out of here. I'll be back to review the next episode once it's released. Until I return, I wish you peace and long life.